Hello Varlets. In this video, we'll be going through a checklist of things you should go through before you want to start foraying into Damnation. This checklist is by no means a comprehensive list of things that you need to do, but rather a good starting point to gauge if you're at least Damnation ready on your own. This checklist also assumes you've got your fundamentals down, a decent level of game sense, and are fairly knowledgeable about the class you want to bring into Damnation. If you are, excellent, you can proceed. But if you need a reminder on what the baseline skills you need, and the mistakes you shouldn't still be making at this difficulty, check this video here afterwards. With that, let's start the first thing on this checklist. Number 1. What is your primary job going to be? As I've said before, while there technically aren't any roles in Darktide like DPS or tank, there are very clear jobs that each class can be built to do. Whether that's shooter management, elite or special killer, horde breaker or CC support, there are many jobs that need to be covered in a Damnation game. And they often happen all at once in a single combat encounter as well. Knowing specifically what you are going to do helps narrow down your focus and so allows you to be more dependable for your team in covering that specific job. The best and most common example are vets with hellbores or las guns. This loadout usually indicates shooter management as their primary focus, but can also fulfill the role of elite and special killer effectively. As a psyker, I can breathe easy knowing that I don't have to take on the primary responsibility of dealing with shooters because we have a vet to cover that. That means I can focus on my role, which with a trauma staff, is to give space for my team to work with, that's CC support, and to also keep my head on a swivel to kill elites and specials with brain bursts before they can even become a threat. While it's important to understand your job well, it doesn't mean you don't do anything else but that. Combat situations can change very quickly in Darktide, and it so often does in high-intensity Damnation. One moment you're clearing a room, and then a horde suddenly spawns to surround you. But your horde breaker preacher with the flamer has also been targeted by a plague ogre that spawned alongside the horde. In this scenario, the team will need to come together and cover that job left open by this sudden change very quickly. This brings us to the next item on the checklist. Number 2. How flexible is your loadout? Everyone can play to the best of their abilities when everything is going well, but what happens when the unexpected hits your team? Going back to the horde breaker preacher example, what happens if she gets downed by the plague ogre or was sent flying off the map? Your team is now without a flamer to keep the hordes back and also has a plague ogre to deal with. So the question you need to ask yourself, is your loadout flexible enough to cover either horde breaking or monster DPS? Or does this spell the end of your Damnation run for your team? Where does skill factor into all of this? Well, I'll get into that towards the end of the video, so make sure to stay for that. Coming back to loadout flexibility, before you get into a Damnation game, especially if you're still new to it, have a moment to take a look at your loadout, both your feats and your weapons, and ask yourself this: if I needed to be a horde breaker alone, how well would I do? Now ask yourself the same question again, but replace horde breaker with any of the other jobs listed here. Are you at least reasonably comfortable with this loadout to take on 2 or more jobs in addition to your primary job? If you answered yes, then your loadout is flexible enough to cover your team in most situations if 1 or more members goes down. Flexibility is one of the main reasons why the most common loadout for vets tend to be the Power Sword and the Cantrell 12, because you can do everything decently well to great with the exception of CC support, and even then you have at least 4 grenades to help you with that. Part of being flexible is also knowing that while you can do more, you won't necessarily be doing them efficiently, nor should you be expected to excel in your non-primary job. However, just knowing what you can flex into can help you immediately pivot into a job that needs to be done, and this can be game-saving. Our third and final item on the checklist is number 3. Be ready to make sacrifices. Now, when I say sacrifice, I don't mean die for your team. You don't win the mission dying for your team or for the God Emperor. You win the mission by making the heretics die for their heretical god. By sacrifice, I mean be willing to give up on your old habits and playstyles that you might have developed in the lower difficulties. In Damnation, you win as a team or you fall as one. And so your decisions need to be made with the team in mind, especially in quick play. If you notice the team is split, find the closest person and stick with them. It's better to move in pairs to keep each other clear from disablers. If the team needs healing, take the initiative to drop the medipack if you think it'll help you get to the next Medicaid station. If the team is struggling to keep up with you, you might need to slow down and take a bit of extra time to clear with them. I'm sure you're starting to notice a pattern here. All of the sacrifices I talk about basically point towards being a good team player that keeps the well-being of the team in mind. If you've ever played the support role in Dota 2 or League of Legends, you'll know exactly what it means to make sacrifices for the benefit of the team. So why do I bring this up? Because it's all too easy for players moving up from lower difficulties to have a main hero syndrome and think everyone else in the team is there to ensure they come out looking successful. These are the players that usually rush ahead, don't bother to pick up materials because someone else will do it, don't bother to take books when the team is okay with it, only use healing and ammo supplies when they feel like it. The examples are numerous. To this date, I have not played a single Damnation game where a single one person was the sole reason for victory. Now with that being said, there are definitely games where it's noticeable when one person is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the team. Be willing to adapt your playstyle to one that benefits the team, and you will benefit from it by having successful missions. Most of the time. Without a doubt, there will be missions where, try as you may, your team was doomed to fail. Largely because, outside of the AI director being a bastard, the total level of skill within the team to take on Damnation was insufficient to push through. This brings us back to the talk of skill we set aside earlier. For the most part, the skills you will be tested in Damnation don't differ that much from Malice. The main difference is how hard you will be punished for messing up. Now of course, having greater combat capability will certainly help you hold your own and even compensate for your team's lack thereof. However, the only skill that you really need to improve at this level, and is a very real difference maker, is your situational awareness and the decisions you make during the moment-to-moment gameplay. This by far has the largest impact on how well you do in Damnation, because the intensity of the game has ramped up, and therefore, the number of good decisions you'll need to make is much greater than the difficulties below. The only way you'll train your situational awareness for Damnation is to get right in there and feel it for yourself. The more scenarios you face, the more experienced your awareness becomes. There will come a point where you sort of develop a third eye for how combat encounters will play out, and know exactly what needs to be prioritized first. But that will come with time, so get ready and get going. That is all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Varlets.